Okay, in the last video, we looked at the push and pull factors for immigration in the late 1800s. In this video, we're going to look at the American response to that push and pull factor, and it is a term called nativism. Nativism is oversimplified, not liking immigrants, right? But it is policy that would protect native-born inhabitants over immigrants. It's not anything that's particularly new in the United States of America. It still exists today, and it's one of those overarching themes of people when they move, the reasons why they move, and the interaction with the existing cultures. Okay, so nativism, policy of protecting native-born people or established inhabitants, otherwise known as the dislike of immigrants. Okay. And the nativism of the late 1800s largely stems from the fact that we have new immigrants from different places, right? The old immigrants are from Western and Northern Europe, okay? And they look a lot like the established inhabitants. They have a very similar shared history and culture with the established inhabitants of the United States of America. The new immigrants is from Southeastern Europe with a different culture, a different ethnicity, and then also from Asia with another different culture and ethnicity, okay? And so nativism shifts from this early 1800s, mid 1800s, anti-German, anti-Irish sentiment. And once they become established, it shifts to this anti-new immigrant sentiment. All right, now, when we look at why would people dislike immigrants, okay? There's a number of reasons that tend to ring true. And you always hear it, and you'll hear it in the modern day too. A lot of it comes down to like the economy, right? And like the sense of like, oh, immigrants are here, they're taking jobs, that entitled Americans think are meant for them. And they resent that, right? That's wealth that they want that is, in their perception, being given to a foreigner, right? So you have labor competition. In the late 1800s, this labor competition manifests itself as strike busters, right? This is, replacement workers coming in and being willing to work for lower wages and in worse conditions. They get employed, and the existing workers resent that, right? So in some sense, they resent immigrant labor, and in another sense, they are also the scapegoats for strikes. So it's kind of getting the wrong end of the narrative here on both sides of it, where labor unions are associated with immigrant labor, and therefore the unease and striking that is happening around the United States and the violent strikes that happen, they get blamed for that. So at one part, unions or like labor is blaming immigrants for their problems. And then on the other side, the middle class and established inhabitants are blaming immigrants for their problems as well. You're gonna lose there, right? All right, so another reason why nativism exists is just a general distrust. Human beings don't trust people that don't look like them, and that's a flaw of humanity, probably. Not probably, definitely is, okay? But that's part of it. And you get these people saying things like they're gonna make America worse, they're gonna change America for the worse, they're coming for your culture, and that resonates with people who don't have much experience with a diverse population, especially when you're talking about rural areas where there's just not as many people, so there's not as much diversity, and they're willing to believe these kinds of things, right? And that creates just a general racial hostility. This is America in the late 1800s, right? It's just racist. We don't like people who don't look like us, so we treat them worse, and that's obviously bad. I don't need to lecture you. Okay, anyway. Now, nativism's history, it goes well beyond the 1850s, right? It begins with Benjamin Franklin and the colonists worried about German immigrants, okay? But in the 1850s, we have something called the Know Nothing Party, which gave their name from their slogan, "We know nothing that is not in the Bible," right? So it's a largely Christian, like, themed political party, and it's Christianity perverted by white racist ideology and kind of mixed together, and you get this political party. And by the 1880s, it's shifted away from the Know Nothing Party to the anti-Chinese the kind of nationalist sentiment. Okay, so we go from this fear of Catholicism, right? So we have these, German Lutheran Protestant tradition in America, and that they feel like that's being threatened by Irish Catholic immigrants, so they have the Know Nothing Party. And then you have that shifting towards this economic nationalist sentiment that becomes anti-Chinese nationalism. Okay, which ultimately results in the 1882 Chinese Exclusion Act, which is a 10-year ban on Chinese immigrants, and Chinese in the United States would not be given a path to citizenship. Okay, so we're cutting off immigration from China, and we're not allowing existing Chinese nationalists to become an American citizen at that time, right? It also results in segregated schools. This isn't something that just happens in the South. It happens on the West Coast a lot too, okay? In fact, one of the most landmark Supreme Court cases recent times is Lau versus Nichols, and it regards, Asian immigrants not receiving education in their native tongue, right? Okay, so then we do literacy tests for citizenship, not just for voting in the South, and then it leads to prejudice and racial violence all across America, right? So racism is not just the American South's legacy there, all right? So let's look at nativism and how it has manifested itself. Here we have some examples. All right, so if you see nativism in the modern day, Coca-Cola played this ad. I'm not gonna play it for you on the video. I don't know how that will sound, right? But Coca-Cola played this ad in 2014, and then they re-upped it in 2016 after Donald Trump won the presidency. And he gave this speech here, which again, I'm not gonna play for you, but you can go look that up and you can see the example of nativism in that speech. But you have Coca-Cola playing this ad, and people get upset because this ad has like children singing "America the Beautiful" in their native tongue, right? And that upsets nativists who see immigrants as a threat. Okay, and all right, so there's a whole uproar on this in 2014. Okay, and if we look, it's like, why is nativism resurging? If it ever even went away, which it really didn't in in the 1920s, and another large nativist uprising or sentiment, and you get the same thing in the 30s and the Depression and the 50s with McCarthyism. Okay, so it doesn't really ever go away, but like it becomes more prevalent in our politics and discourse every once in a while. And you can see this graph here, which shows that, okay, the percent of the population that has immigrated, right? In the 1890s, it's at 14%, right? So we were hovering right around 15% here, right? And now, since really the end of the Cold War and opening up of some immigration from that, you have a new push here. And again, we're back up to about 15%, right? Now, the number of immigrants, you'll see this line here is huge spike here. We also have a large number of native born people too. Okay, so you got to kind of look at the whole percentage here. But in general, we do have a rise in immigration in the United States in this last 20 years. And so just like in the 1800s, people respond in a very similar way. All right. Now, so here's an example of like a nativist political cartoon. Okay, so this is Uncle Sam, right, trying to protect the flag of liberty and American ideas and institutions, right? And so you have this what says riffraff immigration, okay? And so you have much of Hispanic people who are washing up to shore, right? And he's caught between, this and this rock, right? And he's in a perilous condition. And if you can see there, it says illiterate, right? Anarchist, outlaw, right? So it's portraying immigrants as radical politics and criminal, right? Terrorism. Okay, so it says the high tide of immigration and national menace, right? And that the hardworking lower class is being overtaken by criminals and outlaws of Europe. So again, like this is the common theme of nativism, right? All right. And this one right here, this is kind of an ironic cartoon, right? So like we're claiming to be the land of the free. You can see this flag back here. We're claiming to be the land of the free. And Uncle Sam looks like he would like to welcome immigrants in, but they are being kept out by a wall, and these cannons are shaped like quills of a pen, right? So we're the land of the free, but we're going to be highly exclusive as to who we let in, and that's kind of ironic, right? If we are really the land of the free, then people should be free to live here. All right. This one is from the late 1900s, or right after the First World War, 1919 here. And so these words right here, the industrial workers of the world, the red flag, Bolshevism, the mad notions of Europe, these are trying to look at like the idea of communism and Marxism, which this is just after the Russian Revolution, which turned Soviet Union to communism, right? Okay, so it says the world's melting pot. It's got Uncle Sam there. So basically, if we are the world's melting pot, then we're going to absorb all these ideas and they're going to undermine us from within. So this is another nativist cartoon. All right, so here's an older one from that Know Nothing Party era, right? So we're concerned about the Irish and the Germans stealing our elections, right? They come in, they vote, they steal elections, and they're drunkards, right? They got Irish whiskey and lager beer here, and basically just trying to get you to be afraid of German and Irish immigrants and what they might do. This is the one that is from an anti-Chinese nativist, right? So this is a union actually, or not union, but this is a working class kind of political party, and it's talking about that labor unrest here, saying, you have competition with the Chinese immigrants, so we need to pass laws to get the Chinese immigrant out, which eventually becomes the Chinese Exclusion Act, right? All right. And then another one here, afraid that Uncle Sam would be swallowed by foreigners, that people come here and then they changed America for the worse. We have, that nativist sentiment as well. All right, and then this one here, you can see trying to protect our children who are afraid of the alligators coming out. But what are the alligators wearing? Well, that's Catholic robes and, traditional like cardinal hats, right? And sharp teeth. So again, the menace of Catholicism. Okay, anyway, you get the idea here that these are themes here that are perpetual throughout American history, and they don't go away in our modern time, right? Now they become directed at different people. So now largely your nativist sentiment is directed at Middle Easterners and Hispanics, okay? And so you have that dynamic, right? So it's shifted, okay? If you get like a Eastern European immigrant, you're probably not going to immediately, judge them or assume anything about them, but that isn't the case when you see someone with brown skin in America in 2021. They're victims of nativism, right? So, that's the lesson, right? So this stuff isn't new. How we dealt with it in the 1800s and how we deal with it now is largely the same. I have nothing profound else to say about it. This is up to your conclusion as to whether or not you think that there ought to be some sort of change in how America lives out its ideals. But if we are truly to be the land of the free and with liberty and justice, I don't know if nativism has its place.